I came back from vacation to find the locks changed and my sister living in my apartment. My parents told me to get a hotel, so I reclaimed my place and exposed her takeover plan. Still, she tried to sue me. I'm sitting in my car outside my own apartment building typing this because I literally cannot believe what just happened. I need to know if I'm going crazy or if this is as insane as I think it is. I just got back from a 2-week vacation to visit my college roommate Ryan in Colorado. First real vacation I've taken in 3 years since starting my job at an engineering firm. The trip was amazing. Hiking craft breweries, catching up with old friends. I was in such a good mood driving home from the airport. That mood lasted approximately until I tried to unlock my apartment door and my key wouldn't work. At first I thought maybe the lock was just sticky. It's an older building and sometimes the humidity makes things temperamental. But no, the key literally won't even go into the lock. I tried my spare key. Same thing. That's when I noticed the lock itself looks different, newer, shinier. I immediately called my landlord, Mr. Patterson, thinking maybe there was an emergency repair or something. He seemed confused and said he hadn't authorized any lock changes. He offered to come by tomorrow with his master key to check it out. Then I called my parents to see if they knew anything since they have my spare key for emergencies. My mom answered on the second ring. "Oh, honey, you're back. How was your trip? Mom, do you know anything about my apartment locks being changed?" There was this long pause, like unnaturally long. Then she said, "Well, we need to talk about that. Your sister had a housing emergency." "What? Just come by the house and we'll explain everything. Emma really needs your understanding right now." I drove straight to my parents' house. The whole 20-minute drive I'm trying to figure out what possible housing emergency could justify changing the locks on my apartment that I pay rent for. My mind was racing through scenarios. Fire, flood, some kind of natural disaster. But nothing made sense with changing my locks. When I got there, my dad was waiting on the porch looking sheepish. He wouldn't make eye contact with me, which immediately told me something was very wrong. My mom came out and immediately launched into this speech about how family helps family, and Emma's been going through such a hard time and we knew you'd want to help your sister if you understood the situation. Apparently, Emma broke up with her boyfriend Mark 2 weeks ago conveniently, right when I left for vacation and needed somewhere to stay. Instead of, I don't know, asking me if she could crash at my place temporarily, my parents decided to just move her in while I was gone and change the locks. "She's been staying there for almost 2 weeks now," my mom said, like this was completely reasonable. "She's really settled in. It wouldn't be fair to make her move again." I literally couldn't form words. My dad at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. He muttered something about how they thought it would be easier this way and that I probably would have said no if they asked. Of course I would have said no. I finally exploded. "It's my apartment. I pay $1,400 a month in rent. You can't just move someone into my home without asking." My mom got all defensive, saying I was being selfish and that Emma's need was greater than mine right now. She actually said, and I quote, "You can afford a hotel for a few nights while we sort this out." A hotel for a few nights to stay out of my own apartment. I asked for my spare key back and my mom said Emma has it now, and the new keys because she lives there. I told them if Emma wasn't out by tomorrow, I was calling the police. My mom started crying and saying I was heartless. My dad said I should be reasonable and think about what's best for the family. I left and came back to my apartment building. I'm now sitting in my car researching tenant rights and locksmith services. I cannot believe this is happening. They literally stole my apartment and gave it to my sister. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. This isn't just about the apartment, it's about the complete violation of trust. These are the people who raised me, who taught me about respecting others' property and boundaries, and they just took my home like it was nothing. I keep replaying the conversation in my head. The way my mom acted like I was the unreasonable one. The way my dad couldn't look at me. The casual mention that Emma has been there for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. She's probably gone through all my stuff, slept in my bed, used my things, and what kind of housing emergency requires changing locks. If it was really an emergency, wouldn't they have called me, texted something? But no. They waited until I was gone and executed this plan behind my back. I'm also furious about the financial aspect. I work hard for my money. That $1,400 a month rent isn't nothing to me. I budget carefully, save what I can, and chose this apartment because it fit my lifestyle and budget. Now they expect me to pay for a hotel on top of my rent. For how long until Emma decides she's ready to find her own place? Am I crazy? Is this illegal? Can they really do this? I'm so angry I can barely think straight. Update 1 posted 18 hours later. Thank you to everyone who responded to my original post. Your comments gave me the confidence to know I wasn't overreacting. I especially want to thank you/Legal Eagle 2019 for the detailed breakdown of tenant rights and you/Throwaway Landlord for the practical advice about documenting everything. I didn't sleep well in the hotel last night. The bed was lumpy. The room smelled like old cigarettes despite being non-smoking, and I spent most of the night alternating between rage and disbelief. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and started making a plan. So here's what happened today. First thing in the morning, I called a locksmith and explained the situation. The guy was surprisingly sympathetic. Apparently, he sees family drama over housing more often than you'd think. He said he could meet me at the apartment at 10 a.m., but would need proof I was the legal tenant. Fortunately, I had photos of my lease agreement on my phone, plus PDF copies in my email. Next, I texted my parents that I was changing the locks back at 10 a.m., and Emma needed to be out by then. My phone immediately started blowing up with calls from my mom, dad, and several other family members. I didn't answer any of them. I needed to stay focused and not get drawn into emotional manipulation. I also called my landlord again and explained the full situation. He was not happy. Apparently, changing locks without landlord permission violates the lease terms. He said he'd meet us there too and bring documentation about the lease violations. He also mentioned that having an unauthorized tenant, Emma, was grounds for eviction if not resolved immediately. At 9:45 a.m., I arrived at my apartment building. My parents' car was already there along with my Aunt Sarah's SUV. Great, they brought reinforcements. I sat in my car for a moment, steeling myself for what was about to happen. I went up to my apartment to find my mom, dad, Emma, and Aunt Sarah all crowded in the hallway. Emma was crying. My mom immediately started in on me. "Michael, how can you do this to your sister? She has nowhere else to go." I stayed calm and just said the locksmith would be there soon. Emma finally spoke up, still crying, and said she was sorry it happened this way, but that she really needed this. She said Mark had been emotionally abusive, and she had to leave quickly. Now look, if that's true, it's terrible. But here's the thing, we have a good relationship. If she had called me and said, "Mike, I'm in a bad situation and need to crash at your place for a bit," I probably would have said yes for a temporary stay with clear boundaries, not a secret move-in while I was gone. The locksmith arrived right on time along with my landlord, Mr. Patterson. My mom tried to appeal to Mr. Patterson, saying this was a family emergency, and couldn't he understand? Mr. Patterson shut that down real quick. "Ma'am, only Michael's name is on the lease. Anyone else living here without my approval is a violation of the lease terms. If this isn't resolved immediately, I'll have to begin eviction proceedings." That finally seemed to get through to them. My dad started trying to negotiate, asking if I could just give Emma a few more days to find somewhere else. I said no, she's had 2 weeks in my apartment already. The locksmith started working on the locks. Emma was now full-on sobbing, and my aunt was comforting her while shooting me death glares. My mom kept saying things like, "I never thought I'd raised such a selfish son, and family is supposed to come first." Then Emma said something that made my blood run cold. "But I already told my job this was my new address. I changed all my mail forwarding. Jennifer from work is picking me up here tomorrow morning." That's when it hit me. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment emergency response. This was planned. I confronted her right there. "How long have you been planning to move into my apartment?" She got quiet. My mom jumped in, saying it didn't matter, but I pushed. Finally, Emma admitted she'd been apartment hunting for a month, but couldn't find anything in her budget. My parents had suggested she move in with me temporarily, but knew I'd say no. "So you planned this?" I asked. "You waited until I was on vacation and planned to just take over my apartment." My dad tried to defend it, saying they thought if I saw how well it worked, I'd be okay with it. How well? What worked, me being homeless? The locksmith finished, and I had new keys. I told Emma she had 1 hour to pack her things and leave. My mom started screaming that I was heartless. My aunt called me an embarrassment. My dad said I was breaking the family apart. Mr. Patterson stepped in and said if they weren't all out in an hour, he'd call the police for trespassing. That shut them up. I went into my apartment for the first time in 2 weeks, and oh my God, she'd completely rearranged everything. My gaming setup was disconnected and shoved in a corner. My books were boxed up. She'd hung up her live laugh love wall art. There were scented candles everywhere. My kitchen was full of her stuff. She'd even changed my bedroom sheets to her pink floral ones. The violation I felt was indescribable. This was my space, my sanctuary, the place I'd carefully arranged to be comfortable for me. And she just erased me from it like I didn't matter, like my preferences and comfort in my own home were irrelevant. It took 2.5 hours to get everything out because she'd brought so much stuff. Multiple trips to my parents' SUV. I found bags and boxes of her belongings in every closet, under the bed, in the bathroom. She'd even rearranged my kitchen cabinets to fit her dishes and cookware. 2 weeks and she'd completely taken over. The whole time my mom kept making passive-aggressive comments about how I was throwing family out on the street and how disappointed she was in me. At one point she said, "I hope you remember this when you need help someday." The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost laughable. The last thing Emma said before leaving was, "I hope you're happy, knowing I have nowhere to go now." I reminded her she had 2 weeks to figure that out while she was stealing my apartment. They finally left. I spent the rest of the day putting my apartment back together and deep cleaning everything. The scented candle smell was overwhelming. I had to open all the windows despite the heat. I found more of Emma's stuff as I cleaned. Jewelry in my nightstand, medications in my medicine cabinet, even her diary in my bookshelf. My phone was blowing up all day with messages from various family members calling me selfish, heartless, cruel, etc. My cousin posted on Facebook about how some people value their possessions more than family. Subtle right. Several relatives I barely talked to suddenly had opinions about my character. But here's the kicker. I found a notebook Emma left behind. It has apartment listings from 5 weeks ago, notes about Mike's vacation dates, a pros and cons list about moving into Mike's place. Pros included, save money, better neighborhood, can probably guilt him into letting me stay once I'm there. There were even notes about which of my things she wanted to replace and where she'd store my unnecessary items. So yeah, this was completely premeditated. They purposely waited until I was gone to execute this plan, thinking I would just roll over and accept it. I'm done feeling guilty. They tried to steal my home. Update 2 posted 1 week later. The aftermath of getting my apartment back has been more dramatic than I expected. I've been called every name in the book by various family members, received countless guilt-trip texts, and even had to block some relatives on social media because of their passive-aggressive posts about family loyalty and selfishness in modern society. But I need to tell you what I discovered this week because it changes everything. After my last update, things got worse before they got better. The family bombardment continued for days. My phone was constantly buzzing with messages ranging from disappointment to outright hostility. My favorite was my aunt's Facebook rant about how this generation has no concept of family loyalty with a stock photo of a sad elderly woman. She tagged everyone in the family except me, but it was obviously about me. But here's where things got interesting. Remember that notebook I found? I decided to dig a little deeper into Emma's housing emergency. I reached out to her ex-boyfriend Mark through Instagram. I kept it simple, just said I was trying to understand the situation and would appreciate his perspective. I wasn't sure he'd respond, but he did within an hour. We ended up meeting for coffee, and what he told me completely shattered the narrative my family had been spinning. According to Mark, Emma didn't suddenly need to leave because of abuse. He showed me text messages from 2 months ago where Emma was telling him she wanted to break up because she needed to focus on herself and wasn't ready for commitment. She was the one who initiated the breakup, and she was the one who suggested the timeline for moving out. But here's the real kicker. Mark forwarded me an email thread between Emma and a mutual friend where Emma was saying she was excited to be single again and that she'd been planning to upgrade her living situation when she left Mark's place. She specifically mentioned my apartment, saying it was in a much better neighborhood and she was working on a plan with her parents. This email was dated 6 weeks before my vacation. Mark also told me that Emma had been openly apartment hunting for months but kept rejecting places for various reasons. Too small, too far from work, too expensive, not nice enough. She told multiple friends that she deserved better than what she could afford and that it was unfair that I had such a nice place all to myself when I didn't even appreciate it properly. He showed me more messages where Emma complained about my apartment, specifically how I was wasting the second bedroom by using it as an office, how the neighborhood was perfect for her lifestyle, and how she could do so much more with the space than I was doing. The emotional abuse claim. Mark had screenshots of Emma joking with friends about how she was going to play the victim card if anyone questioned why she needed to move out so quickly. She literally strategized about how to make people feel sorry for her. I was furious. I screenshotted everything and sent it to our family group chat with a message. Since everyone seems to have an opinion about the situation, here's some context about Emma's emergency. The group chat exploded. My mom tried to say the screenshots were taken out of context. Emma claimed Mark was manipulating the narrative and that he was just bitter about the breakup. My dad said it didn't matter why she needed to move, family should help family. But then something unexpected happened. My grandmother, who's usually pretty quiet in family drama, chimed in. She wrote a long message about how disappointed she was in everyone involved. She said what my parents and Emma did was disgraceful and that they had violated my trust in an unforgivable way. She said if they needed help finding Emma housing, They should have asked the family openly, not conspired to steal my apartment. Her message ended with, "I raised you better than this. Patricia, my mom, and I'm ashamed that you've passed these values on to your children." Suddenly, the tide started turning. My uncle, Paul, mom's brother, admitted he thought the whole thing was sketchy from the start, but didn't want to get involved. My cousin Jennifer said she'd wondered why Emma was so calm during her supposed emergency and why she'd been so specific about wanting to move into my place weeks before the breakup. The best part. My Aunt Sarah, the one who came as backup, messaged me privately. She said her husband had been asking questions about the situation, and she'd realized she only heard my mom's version. When I shared the screenshots with her, she was mortified. She apologized profusely and admitted my mom had made it sound like I'd abandoned Emma in her hour of need, leaving out the part about changing locks and the planned takeover. More family members started reaching out privately, admitting they'd been given a very different version of events. My mom had apparently been calling everyone, spinning a tale of Emma being basically homeless and me refusing to help despite having a spare bedroom. She conveniently left out that Emma had been living there secretly for 2 weeks and they'd changed the locks. Emma tried to do damage control. She posted a long Facebook status about how family dynamics are complicated and how she was sorry things got so messy, but that she was just trying to survive a difficult situation. The comments were not kind. Several mutual friends called her out, especially after Mark started sharing his side of the story with their friend group. The most revealing conversation came from my cousin Stephanie, who works at the same company as Emma. She called me after seeing the group chat explosion and said, "I have to tell you something." Apparently, Emma had been bragging at work about getting a sweet apartment upgrade and how she'd played it perfectly to get my place. She'd told coworkers she was planning to slowly move more stuff in and establish residency, making it legally difficult for me to kick her out. She'd even researched tenant rights and told people she planned to make it too awkward for me to force her out once she was settled. Stephanie had recordings. Their company records all video calls for training purposes, and Emma had discussed this during a casual lunch call with coworkers. In the recording, you can hear Emma saying, "Michael's too nice to actually kick me out once I'm there, and my parents will guilt him into letting me stay. By the time he gets back from vacation, it'll be too late. Possession is 9/10 of the law, right?" She also said the best part is the rent control in his building. "If I can establish residency, I'll have an amazing apartment for like half what it would cost to get my own place in that neighborhood." Emma has been staying with my parents since I kicked her out, which apparently isn't going well. My dad texted me yesterday saying Emma's driving them crazy with her demands and complaints about their house being too far from everything and the guest room being too small. He asked if I'd reconsider letting her stay with me just for a month or two while she apartment hunts. I responded with a link to apartment listings in the area and nothing else. My mom hasn't spoken to me directly since this all went down, but she's been telling family members that I'm holding a grudge and punishing Emma for a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. They called breaking into my apartment and changing the locks. A misunderstanding. Several family members who initially attacked me have apologized. My cousin, who made the passive-aggressive Facebook post, deleted it and sent me a message saying she was sorry for jumping to conclusions. My uncle called to say he was proud of me for standing up for myself, but the damage to my relationship with my parents and Emma feels irreparable. How do you trust people who conspired to steal your home, who painted you as a villain to everyone you care about, who were willing to leave you homeless rather than help Emma find an actual solution to her housing situation? The entitlement still astounds me. The fact that they thought I'd just accept this, that I'd come home from vacation and be like, "Oh, well, guess I'll just live in a hotel now." It shows such a fundamental lack of respect for me as a person. I've started looking into security cameras for my apartment. Maybe that's paranoid, but I've learned not to underestimate what family will do when they think they're entitled to your stuff. Final update posted 3 months later. I debated whether to post this update, but since so many of you have been checking in, I figured I'd share how this all concluded. Buckle up, because somehow it got even more insane. About a month after I got my apartment back, I was starting to feel like things were settling down. Emma had found her own place, a studio apartment in a less desirable area, but within her budget and family tensions were slowly cooling. I'd even had a cordial text exchange with my dad about something unrelated to the apartment drama. Then I received a certified letter. I thought maybe it was something from my landlord, but no, it was from a lawyer. Emma was claiming tenant rights to my apartment. I'm not kidding. The letter stated that Emma had established residency during her 2-week stay, and that I had illegally evicted her without proper notice. It demanded that I either allow her to return to the apartment or compensate her for damages including moving expenses, emotional distress, and the difference in rent between my apartment and the studio she'd rented. The amount they were asking for was $15,000. I immediately called my friend William from law school who'd helped my college roommate with a contract dispute. He looked at the letter and actually laughed out loud. He said that in our state you need to reside somewhere for at least 30 days to establish tenancy, and even then there are specific requirements about mail utilities, etc. Emma had none of that. But here's where it gets really crazy. My parents were funding this legal threat. They were so convinced that I was in the wrong that they were paying for a lawyer to try to force me to house Emma. William helped me draft a response, outlining why Emma had no legal claim and mentioning that we had documentation of the premeditated nature of the apartment takeover. We also included a warning about pursuing harassment charges if this continued. I thought that would be the end of it, but 2 weeks later, my grandmother called. She was organizing a full family meeting at her house. Mandatory attendance, she said. Her voice had that tone that meant this wasn't a request. I almost didn't go, but I've always respected my grandmother. She's the matriarch of our family, and when she speaks, people listen. Plus, I was curious to see how this would play out. The meeting was on a Sunday afternoon. When I arrived, the entire extended family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone. My parents and Emma sat on one side of the living room, me on the other with everyone else scattered around. It felt like a court trial. My grandmother started by saying she was disgusted by recent events and wanted to hear from everyone involved. She'd already heard various versions through the family grapevine, but wanted the truth. Emma went first, spinning this tale about how hard her life has been, how expensive rent is, how she just needed some help. She actually said with a straight face that she thought I would have wanted to help if I knew the situation. She portrayed the lock changing as a miscommunication and said she never meant for things to go so far. When it was my turn, I came prepared. I had printed out everything, the screenshots from Mark, the notebook pages, the work recording Stephanie had shared, everything. I laid out the timeline methodically. 6 weeks before my vacation, Emma emails friends about planning to get my apartment. 5 weeks before Emma's notebook entries about researching tenant law. 4 weeks before Emma tells coworkers about her plan. 2 weeks before Emma and my parents finalized the plan. And during my vacation execution of the apartment takeover. After my return, the legal threats. I showed them Emma's pros and cons list where she'd actually written, "Can probably guilt him into letting me stay once I'm there." I played the recording of her telling coworkers about making it too awkward for me to kick her out. The room was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Then I showed them something new I discovered. I'd gone through my credit card statements and noticed some unusual charges during my vacation. When I called the credit card company, they confirmed the charges were made with my card physically present in my city while I was in Colorado. Emma had used my emergency credit card, which I kept in my apartment to buy furniture and decorations for her new place. Almost $2,000 worth of charges. My mom tried to interrupt several times, but my grandmother shut her down with a look. When I finished, my grandmother turned to my parents and asked, "How could you raise your children to think this behavior is acceptable?" The room erupted. My Aunt Sarah revealed that my mom had been asking other family members for money to help Emma with rent, but never mentioned the apartment takeover. My Uncle Paul said he'd been wondering why Emma turned down his offer to help her apartment hunt weeks before my vacation. Then came the biggest bombshell. My cousin Stephanie stood up and announced she had something to share. It turns out this wasn't the first time Emma had done something like this. 3 years ago, Emma had been dating a guy named David who had a nice condo downtown. When they broke up, she'd refused to move out, claiming she'd established residency. David had to go through a formal eviction process that took months and cost him thousands in legal fees. Stephanie only knew because David was her friend's brother, and the story had become legendary in their friend circle as a cautionary tale about letting girlfriends move in. My parents looked shocked. They genuinely didn't seem to know about this. Emma tried to deny it, but Stephanie had receipts including court documents that were public record. The similarities were striking. Emma had moved in, gradually claimed abuse when asked to leave, and tried to establish tenant rights. My grandmother stood up and addressed Emma directly. "You're a parasite," she said. "You take advantage of people's kindness and twist the law to steal from them. And she turned to my parents, enabled this behavior." She then announced that she was restructuring her will. My parents and Emma would receive nothing unless they made this right. She also said she'd be helping me with any legal fees if Emma continued her harassment. The meeting ended with my grandmother saying Michael is owed apologies from all of you who attacked him without knowing the facts. And Emma, you're to stay away from Michael permanently. No contact. Period. The aftermath was swift. Emma dropped the legal threats immediately, and my parents finally admitted they'd been wrong and offered to pay for the lock changes and my hotel stay. Multiple family members apologized for believing the initial story without questioning it. Emma was essentially ostracized from family events. But there's one final twist to this story. Last week, I got a call from my apartment building's management company. They'd received an application from Emma for a unit in my building. She'd listed me as a reference, claiming I was her brother and would vouch for her character. I told them everything. I sent them the documentation about the illegal lockout, the attempted legal extortion, and even the information about David's eviction case. I made it clear that not only would I not vouch for her, but I'd consider it harassment if she moved into my building. They rejected her application. I also discovered, through the family grapevine, that Emma's studio apartment lease wasn't renewed due to multiple complaints from neighbors and late rent payments. She's currently couch surfing with various friends, but that's not going well either. Apparently, she's worn out her welcome in multiple places by trying to claim she has rights to stay longer than agreed. My relationship with my parents is slowly healing, but it'll never be the same. They've apologized repeatedly and seem to genuinely understand how badly they messed up. We have dinner once a month now, but the trust is gone. I can't look at them without remembering how easily they conspired against me. Emma has tried reaching out several times through fake social media accounts and mutual friends. Each message follows the same pattern. She's sorry, she's struggling, she just needs a little help. Surely I can forgive family. I document each attempt in case I need a restraining order eventually. The funniest part. Last week I ran into Mark, Emma's ex, at a coffee shop. We actually ended up having lunch together. He told me Emma had recently contacted him asking if she could move back in temporarily. He obviously said no, but she'd apparently told him she'd learned her lesson and wouldn't try the same tricks again. We had a good laugh about that. So there you have it. My family tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the villain for not letting my sister steal my apartment. When that didn't work, they tried legal threats. In the end, the truth came out, revealing a pattern of parasitic behavior that had been enabled for years. I'm still in my apartment. I love my place even more now, knowing what I went through to keep it. I've upgraded my security system and have cameras covering every entrance. My landlord gave me a great renewal rate, partly because he was so impressed with how I handled the situation. My grandmother and I have grown much closer through this. We have lunch every week and she's become my biggest supporter. She often says the whole ordeal was worth it because it revealed everyone's true character. Looking back, the most surreal part was how confident Emma and my parents were that their plan would work. They genuinely believed I would just roll over and accept being kicked out of my own apartment. The entitlement still amazes me. For anyone dealing with similar family boundary issues, here's what I learned. 1. Document everything. Those screenshots and recordings saved me. 2. Don't let guilt override your rights. Family doesn't mean doormat. 3. When people show you who they are, believe them. 4. Sometimes losing family members is actually gaining peace. 5. Always have security cameras. Always. Thanks for following this wild journey with me, Reddit. I never thought a simple vacation would lead to discovering years of manipulation and entitlement in my family. But hey, at least I kept my apartment, gained a wonderful relationship with my grandmother, and learned who I can actually trust. Oh, and for those wondering, yes, I'm taking another vacation this summer. This time, I'm hiring a house sitter, someone not related to me.